Greetings and welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you're here today. We're going to discuss a few of the new Record Store Day releases, which I have here in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, and a bunch of new releases I just purchased. This really cool store, which is Below All Blues, a really serious jazz Kisa listening bar in Chinatown. The store is called the Mixtape Club. They have a website. And the store has a really I hate this word, curated collection of jazz and soul and R&B, a lot of Japanese imports. But I've been searching out records to play at Tokyo Record Bar on Tuesdays, where I spin and I'm having a wonderful time. I'm learning a lot. Gets me out of the house, gets me out of my head. My sister always said, "You're too much in your head," which is the truth. And from Tokyo Record Bar, I also have upcoming gigs at Kisa Kisa, a beautiful jazz listening bar, pure jazz listening bar out in Crown Heights. I have a gig at some point this coming month at In Between, a great listening bar at the back of Chelsea Market, which is sort of down a hallway, and there it is. I'll throw a couple photos in. And I'm making another video just about the incredible Kisa scene that originated in Japan and is blowing up in New York City and in LA. A friend of mine, Adam Ellis, who works purely as a DJ, compiled a list, and there are about 30 different listening bars in the city. Now they run the gamut of music that's played. A lot of it's house music or stuff like that, and Devin Turnbull has installed systems in places like Public Records and La Ziza, where unfortunately I didn't get a gig. I don't know why. I guess I didn't meet their criteria, or maybe it's what's that phrase? Maybe it's just because I'm too old. Which if that's your attitude, fuck it. I have much more knowledge and a much bigger record collection than probably many of the DJs who are out there working. Greg Kaz accepted, of course. But it's an amazing scene happening here, and that's why I've been buying records lately, is to play things as I get a better handle on what it takes to kind of sync with an audience in a bar. You can't really play Bill Evans in a situation like this. You could probably open up with Bill Evans, but I usually open up with Lonnie Liston Smith, Astral Traveling. It just sets a certain vibe. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about these Record Store Day releases. We have Kenny Dorham, Blue Bossa in the Bronx, live from the Blue Morocco. Freddie Hubbard, live from the Blue Morocco, both cut in 1977 at this Blue Morocco club up in Harlem. Nothing of it exists now. It was owned by Sylvia Robinson, who owned the Sugar Hill Records and had the amazing pop hit Pillow Talk, which was a real trifle that sort of prefaced Love to Love You Baby back in the 70s. And then we have Mingus in Argentina, the Buenos Aires concerts. So I'll go from best to okay to definitely on fire. Now this is Freddie Hubbard, On Fire, from the Blue Morocco in 1967. Both of these Blue Morocco sessions, recording dates were done, live dates, in 1967, when Freddie Hubbard is absolutely at his peak. He'd just come off a beautiful string of great Blue Note records, Open Sesame, Breaking Point, can't remember the names of all of them. Freddie Hubbard is not quite as lionized as really as Kenny Dorham, particularly Lee Morgan, when he is an incredible trumpet player, the equal of either one of those gentlemen. Maybe because he didn't make as many records on Blue Note. He made Red Clay, of course, and is a Straight Ahead on CTI, which are great records that expanded upon the sound that started at Blue Note, was more influenced by Bitches Brew. And he is on fire on this record with a very good lineup. Benny Maupin on tenor saxophone, Kenny Barron on bass, Kenny Barron on piano, Herbie Lewis on bass, Freddie Waits on drums. And they are covering Crisis, Up Jump Spring. This is a 3 LP alert. This will probably be $79. Bye Bye Blackbird, Summertime, Breaking Point. The recording quality of this is, I would say, very good, particularly good for a recording cut at a club in 1967. You get a sense of the atmosphere of the room. The instruments have a sense of decay. They sound very full. And Freddie is playing long solos, and he is burning. If you're a fan of Freddie Hubbard, I would say this is actually a pretty easy purchase because the band is exceptional. You get to hear Benny Maupin sort of I believe, Headhunters. And he's strong, but he's not as strong as Freddie Hubbard. Kenny Barron sounds great. Herbie Lewis's bass is rather recessed. You can't really hear it. You can feel it more than you can hear it. And Freddie Waits, who played on a lot of Blue Note sessions, his son Nasheet Waits is one of the busiest drummers in jazz now. Freddie Waits sounds exceptional on his record. He's really shaping everything. He's really dynamic. He's really punchy. He actually sounds better here than I've heard him on Blue Note records. He's just really pushing and driving. And these are long performances. Side A is entirely Crisis, 18 minutes and 40 seconds. Side C, Echoes of Blue, 15 minutes and 42 seconds. Up Jump Spring, 17 minutes and 23 seconds. True Colors, Breaking Point, Summertime, Breaking Point again. This is an exceptional live recording, a great document of Freddie Hubbard at his peak. I'll tell you a little Freddie Hubbard story. When I first started getting into jazz, I was still living in Charlotte, and an old movie house called the Visualite had been turned into a jazz club. So we went to see Freddie Hubbard. Carl Allen was on drums. I don't remember who else was in the band. Everybody's there. 8 o'clock, the band's set up. No Freddie. Everyone waited for about an hour, and Freddie never showed up. And so they said, oh, we'll refund your tickets, or he'll come back at a later date. So he did. We went to the gig, whenever that was, a month later. And Freddie said, oh, I'm sorry, man. I couldn't make the gig. I was in bed with this chick, and I just didn't want to leave. So, and he put on, for me, a master class in group interplay. Kenny Dorham, Blue Bossa in the Bronx, live from the Blue Morocco. Recorded in 1967, 5 years before he died, and frankly, it sounds like it. He sounds tired. His solos are short. He sounds like he hasn't slept in a week. I mean, this is nothing like the Freddie Hubbard you would hear at the Blue Note records like Afro-Cuban or Trompetta Toccata or at the Cafe Bohemia. This is not that guy. I imagine he died from drug abuse. He was 48 when he passed. And this sounds like a pickup date for all the guys in the band. Sonny Red, alto saxophone, Cedar Walton piano, Paul Chambers bass, Dennis Charles drums. This is a weird recording. Everything sounds rather recessed. Images are small, except Paul Chambers' image, which is very big. It's actually clearer and louder than Herbie Lewis on the Freddie Hubbard record, but I think that may be more down to Paul Chambers' incredible dynamic presence. Dennis Charles is kind of a weird choice. I always associate him with more of the avant-garde school. He's playing very light, like he's just keeping time. The real star of this disc is alto saxophonist Sonny Red, who sounds like Eric Dolphy on this record. He takes long solos. He's powerful. He's creative. He's very imaginative. He drives everything. You get the impression that Kenny Dorham gets up, plays a solo, which he has to take some rest through, and sits down. I can't recommend this record. I'm sorry. Now, Zev Feldman is releasing, I think, 5 records. The 2 I mentioned. This one, a Bill Evans record, which I don't have yet, and a Patsy Cline record. He played excerpts from the Patsy Cline track, which was cut from old radio station or TV shows in the 50s, and it is phenomenal. They're going to send it to me, not in time for me to make a video, but the Patsy Cline stuff sounded phenomenal. And I expect the Bill Evans disc, what's it called, Straight Ahead in Finland or something, will probably be exceptional as well. I'm a big fan of all the records that Zev has released of Bill Evans, except Live at Ronnie Scott's, which is full of distortion. I would not buy that. Not that you can, it's gone. But most of the Bill Evans in Europe discs sound exceptional. They're all cut from tape, recorded on, radio station boards. People really cared about the sound even then. They still do. In a couple months, I'm going to Munich to cover High in Munich, which is an incredible audio show. In America, you go to an audio show, it's guys with hair the color of mine, and that's about it. Even though that is slowly changing, even in American audio shows. But in Europe, at Munich, the biggest audio show in the world, you see couples, you see families, you see single women walking around making notes. I know, because I was checking them out, looking for their boyfriends. They didn't have one. You see gay couples. You see lesbian couples. Are lesbians gay? I'm not sure about the nomenclature there. You see everybody, and they're enjoying it. Also, Munich is 4 large halls, and in each hall there's free cappuccino, free coffee. There's a beer garden between one of the halls. So it's a wonderful, incredible, scary event for someone like myself who has to cover all those rooms. But in saying that, this is my favorite of all the Zev Feldman releases this year. Mingus in Buenos Aires. And this band sounds like a band. This is a real band. This is not pickup cats for a gig. This is a real band. Ricky Ford, Jack Walrath, Robert Nellum, so I'm not really familiar with, Danny Richmond, On Fire. And this is a great recording. This is 1972, no, 77. So, you know, recording technology advanced exponentially from 67 to 77, and you can hear it. This sounds as good as any live record you might hear today, perhaps. There's presence, there's depth, there's tone. It's just a great recording, and the performance is exquisite. This is just a phenomenal document of Mingus doing his thing. Great photographs, the usual liner notes we're used to seeing with Zev's productions. The group covers Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, Duke Ellington's Sound of Love, which is one of my favorite tracks of all time that Mingus performed. Nod in Your Head Blues, 3 or 4 Shades of Blue, Cherokee for Harry Carney, Cumbia and Jazz Fusion. There's a couple of jazz improvisations on piano by Mingus. Sue's Changes, Fables of Faubus, which is what Zev played at All Blues at the opening ceremony, whatever. Zev rented a hall, All Blues, an amazing listening hall down in Chinatown, and he played tracks from all these records. And he played Fables of Faubus, but this is just exceptional. It's 3 LPs, so it's probably going to be $80. But if you're a fan of Charles Mingus, this too is a no-brainer. This is a great, great record. And you don't collect things just because they're collectible. But when this is gone, it's gone. They've only done a repress of one Record Store Day release from Resonance and Zev and Elemental. They did sometime in Norway, whatever. I think the first or second Bill Evans Record Store Day release. That's been it. They're all gone. We get them at Jazz Record Center, they're gone. What is not gone are the Emily Remler records and all these Sun Ra records. That's another story. But this is a great record. I really, really enjoyed this and recommend it highly. Okay, let's get into some of the recent things I've picked up, and they're not all just focused on me spinning turntables. This is one of the, when I first came to New York, I was dating a Chinese opera singer, and she had an OK stereo, and I bought this record and listened to it non-stop. Keith Jarrett's still alive with Gary Peacock and Jack DeJohnette. Look how young Jack DeJohnette looks there. This is a textbook on how to play jazz trio. Everyone sounds wonderful. Everybody's really balanced. This is a beautiful recording from 1988, ECM. And this is a hard record to find. I mean, a lot of Peacock, you know, they're doing a lot of reissues or like Record Store Day stuff, things that have never been available before from Keith Jarrett. But it's hard to find these basic ECM releases. This is a double LP. I highly recommend this if you can find it. Jarrett is in exceptional form. I used to listen to this record nonstop. I had a cassette. I played it all the time. Great record. Another collection I buy often when I find them, and I found this at the Mixtape Club where I picked up a lot of these records. The Spiritual Jazz series. Now this one I listened to it on my hi-fi. The reproduction is not that great, but they're very well researched. This is Riverside, etc. Spiritual Jazz 16. Esoteric Progressive and Modal Jazz from Riverside, Jazzland, and Milestone. I paid $32 for this. I have all the Spiritual Jazz comps. I think they're all great. You really learn a lot. They have amazing liner notes that require 3.0 glasses to read. Excellent. Fred Hirsch, a wonderful pianist. I wrote about for Downbeat a million years ago. With vocalist Rondy Charleston. I'm sorry, this record stinks. Suspended in Time, a song cycle. It just sounds like, it's just boring. She's boring. This is a horrible record. Don't buy this record. I mean, if you like sort of wispy female vocalists sort of musing about art and love and cheese over tinkling piano, great, but otherwise, forget it. A record I did buy to spin at the record store, at the record bar, Lonnie Liston Smith and the Cosmic Echoes, Visions of a New World. These are spiritual jazz records cut in the 70s, right up there with the early Isles Coltrane records. They're nowhere as deep as those records. They're not as serious. The musicians aren't as accomplished. There are some cheesy vocals on all these Lonnie Liston Smith records, but there's always a couple tunes on these records that are just grooving and sort of hallucinatory and mind-expanding and really, really beautiful. Great stuff. On nights I can't sleep, I stay up and I doom scroll on Instagram. I'm sure you've done this. And in the middle of the night on the East Coast and Instagram, it totally changes. There's not endless political nonsense. There are all these people making videos about the music they love. And I'd never seen all these people. And there are people recommending like 5 jazz masterpieces, 5 electronic masterpieces, you know, new Brazilian albums. I just wrote down a bunch today. And one person's name that constantly popped up was Greg Fote. Now, apparently he's a British keyboardist, and these are modern day recordings. They sound great on my stereo. It's sort of, you know, it's sort of like, there's definitely a lounge element to it, but everybody can play. The drums have a little bit of a drum and bass vibe. There are a lot of synthesizers going on, but it's sort of mellow music. It's grooving, mellow music. It kind of reminds me of Sade without the vocals and more of a jazz angle, but that gives you an idea where this stuff is coming from. I bought 5 of these records by Greg Fote. They're really cool. I can't wait to play them at the club. When I do the gig at Silence Please, an amazing listening room downtown that says they play ambient music, this will fit right in. I'm really psyched about this. On an entirely different tip, I'm a huge fan of the heavy metal band Mastodon. They're not really heavy metal, they're just rock. Kind of like if Pink Floyd played metal, they would sound like Mastodon. Incredible musicianship, great composing, fun songs. I love this band. They made a bunch of records. A few years ago, I bought one of their albums and it sounded horrible. Like somebody had obviously transferred straight from a digital file who didn't know what they were doing to vinyl. This record sounds exceptional. It's a 2 LP set. What's the name of this record? Medium Rarity. This is not an album. This is a bunch of B-sides, I guess. Oh well, I thought it was wonderful. And whoever did the mastering of vinyl knows what they're doing. If you want to hear crunching, heavy rock that blows the walls down, but is still great music and not just a bunch of adenoidal, adolescent wanging. You know, so much modern pop just, you know, in saying that, I was watching, as I was doom scrolling, there were all these like my favorite pop bands from Australia, and some of them sounded great. Anyway, I love this band, Mastodon. To go in yet another direction, I just received this in the mail a couple weeks ago. Marian McPartland at the Peninsula Library in 1972. Perhaps best known for her long-running NPR show where she would interview musicians, including she did one with Donald Fagen. I have a few Marian McPartland records from early in her career. She had a residency, they didn't call it a residency then, at the Hickory House, which may have been in Chicago, I don't know. But she's just a very stately player. I don't want to say like Yutta Hip. She was sort of more urbane than Yutta Hip, but and not thought of much in the day, but was a great ambassador for jazz from her radio show and a great musician. More new arrivals, another Greg Fote album, Psychosynthesis. I just love these records. They're all very similar with slight changes. I think this one is a little more electronic oriented. Sometimes you buy records and you go, why did I buy this record? You get it home. Some of these European free jazz avant-garde records from the 70s. Appendix Space Trip, spiritual jazz funk fusion. Space Trip is a cult record released in '73 on the legendary Amigo label. It's sort of mildly interesting. They got me for $30. Edu Lobo and is it Maria Bethania? Anyway, classic disc on Elenco. Edu Lobo, one of the great Brazilian musicians. There they are. I'll buy anything that's Brazilian, really anything on Elenco if it's in good condition. I play a lot of Brazilian records at Tokyo Record Bar, and people always respond very positively. A couple times we've had Brazilian people in there and they loved it. I'll play Elis Regina. I played this Brazil 70 comp I got at the store recently. I love Brazilian music. It has a force, it has life, it has melody, it has amazing rhythms. It's very, very sophisticated music. The most Americans, even a lot of jazz fans, aren't that aware of beyond the usual Antonio Carlos Jobim. There's a world of Brazilian music, and I should do a video just on those records that I have. I bought This Is the Mixtape Club, which I'd never heard before. J&K Stonebone, an early CTI record that only came out in Japan. The lineup includes George Benson, Herbie Hancock, Bob James, Ron Carter, Grady Tate, and Ross Tompkins. And this is a perfect mellow CTI outing. Really happy to find this. I forgot where I was when I found this Malo record. Malo was led by Jorge Santana, I believe, the brother of Carlos Santana, and to a degree this album, their music is much truer to real Latin music, has more of a communal vibe, less of a rock vibe. And they had a hit in '72, Suavecito, I think. And really beautiful, beautifully played, great vocals, great cover. Recently I did an interview with the Duca da Fonseca, and we were talking about the great drummer Milton Banana. And I found a photo of Milton that I used for my Facebook avatar, and I was somewhere, I don't remember where, and I found that album with the same Milton Banana in Rio, having a drink and a smoke, looking beautiful. Milton Banana Trio, Wow Amigo Chico, I guess was Chico Barak. Anyway, and this is a beautiful, young Milton Banana. The old sleeves from Brazil are very thin, but this is more of a sleeve than you usually get. Usually it's just like a piece of paper. But this is on RCA. Beautiful Brazilian sounds. Good buddy of mine came in the store, and one of my regular customers and a good friend gave me this record, which I'd never seen before, the Doug Carn Trio, and I haven't listened to this yet. He is known for his records on Black Jazz with Gene Carn. Actually, I have a Gene Carn record here too coming. And I'm psyched to play this. Originally on Savoy. Good Lord. Albert Nicholson drums, Gary Starling guitar, Doug Carn organ. I bet this will be similar to, I have an really early Charles Earlin record where he's playing organ in some little club. And it's true grits and gravy organ. I bet this is as well. Back when I lived in North Carolina and I was a young man smoking lots and lots of dope, I'd go to a friend's house and he would have the records of these bizarre records by this guy called Muslim Gaze, Muslim Gauze, Hamas Ark. You see some fighters there with 44 Magnums. I found a bunch of these records at Eargot Records. Really cool record store in the East Village. This is very textured. I don't know if you can see it. But this fellow was making records in the 90s. He made a bunch of records in the 90s. A British citizen who died not long after he made all these records. And they're basically dub records, taken from dub, but using very primitive samplers. You get these really unusual organic sounds. They're very eerie. So I have a number of the Muslim Gauze records. They don't really fit into any genre easily except this sort of electronic dub. Another record I found from my doom scrolling at 3 a.m., Bolbeck. To me, this sort of reminds me of organic tronica. There was a name for it, woodtronica. Electronica that draws on natural sounds, garden sounds, woodland creatures, if you will. Alex Concado and Barthélemy Corbelet, but a really cool record. I guess it's basically an ambient record with beats, but really fun. Okay, we keep going. Another really cool Brazilian record I found at Human Head, Samba Exportação, M. Renato and his Brazilian Orchestra. Fun record, probably more fun than serious. Back when I worked at a law firm from 1999 to 2009, when the internet had really just come into its own, I would go on the internet and scour for all these jazz detective soundtracks. Stuff like Lalo Schifrin or Roy Budd, all this amazing British and American music. And this album pulls a few of them together. The Man with the License, Volume 3. Fidelity is just so-so. On the cover we have the beautiful Diane Rigg with, I think, one of the early James Bonds. Music by Roland Shaw, Ray Barretto, Herbie Mann, Ken Woodman, Hugo Montenegro, Lalo Schifrin, Billy Strange, Ray Barretto. Nothing by Roy Budd, who did the amazing soundtrack for Get Carter. If you haven't seen Get Carter, the original version with Michael Caine, it's just amazing. The soundtrack is really friggin' cool to match the darkness of the movie. Another really cool record that came out a few years ago that I had and then lost, High Pulp Pursuit of Elvis? Elvos. This record includes Jaleel Shaw, who was one of the great, I think, underappreciated saxophonists working today. And this is loosely sort of like Theo Crocker, kind of fusion-y, kind of electronic, kind of beats, but very immersive. Similar to what's happening in the UK with all those amazing groups, these guys are doing equally brilliant work. Oh, this has Theo Crocker, Brandy Younger, Jacob Mann, Jaleel Shaw, an Anti-Records that used to be a sort of an alternative label. Not to be overwhelmed with all these beats and pieces. At the store, we recently got in the collection of George Shearing. And you can see on this Cannonball Adderley record, Braille strips. They are on all his records that we're now selling in the store. And it's really cool. I mean, I don't know what all is coming out. I don't know what he's pulling out of the boxes. I didn't help him pick up the collection from George Shearing's wife, who lives in uptown. He said she had a beautiful apartment. But this is a wonderful MRC Cannonball Adderley record. There's a handful of great Cannonball Adderley records. The one on Blue Note that's really a Miles record. A bunch of the early MRC records. His first record, introducing Cannonball and Savoy, that is just a beautiful record. Such a life force, such a sweet life force, really. This is a record that bridges jazz and electronic music fairly well. Simon Moulier, Elements of Light. With Lex Corton, Rick Rosado, and Jungin Kim on drums, a local New York City player who's bringing the heat, as they say. Also to play at the store, classic Pharoah Sanders, Themby. I paid full price for this. This is a new Impulse reissue. Elemental also sent me a little handful of Pharoah Sanders reissues I just haven't gotten to yet. Another Greg Fote group, Dark is the Sun. Cool cover. I have like 5 of these. I love them. I just love the vibe. It's languorous, it's loungy, but it's definitely jazz. Beautiful improvisations, but it's all like 3 a.m. And all his stuff is on Spotify if you don't want to just check it out. Thanks for sticking with me thus far. I hope these are some interesting records for you. Here's another one I bought after hearing it at 4 a.m. Ebby Soda, which is sort of more Afrobeatish than I thought it would be, more groove oriented than I thought it would be, not as melodic as I would have liked, but there you have it. Also at 4 a.m., Cortex, a French fusion record from 1975. This is pretty interesting. I'm still sort of listening to it. You know, slightly avant-garde, slightly chamber-oriented, slightly tranquil, you might say. I used to sort of poo-poo these Jazz is Dead records, but lately I've really gotten into them, and I bought this one at Mixtape Club. Jean Carn, who, as I said earlier, made a bunch of records for black jazz with Doug Carn before she became kind of a soul pop star. But I just, you know, this has expansive grooves. It's really funky. It's a great way to introduce jazz to people who don't like jazz. But these are all jazz players. It's very forceful, beautiful recordings. Just great. I mean, it's ostensibly fusion, but without any of the baggage that word carries. It's very soulful. It's very grooving. I never had this. Carmel Jones. This is a beautiful recording. With Harold Land, Frank Sisteri, Gary Peacock, and Leon Pettis. This is a record I think every jazz fan should have. He only made a couple of records, I believe. And it's just beautiful West Coast, you know, cool bop, as Dan the Jazz Shepherd likes to say. Yes, another Greg Fote record with Eero Kovstinen Feathers. They're all great. I love all these records. This is great traveling music, great cruising music, ambient music, lounge music, but it's jazz. Big beds, big synth beds. One of the early founders of the sort of lounge jazz thing, Bob James 2, which I also play at the bar, but this is a great record on its own. A record I've seen a million times but never bought, Milton Nascimento, Lo Borges. I haven't really listened to this record yet, but everyone says this is his masterpiece. When I was really getting into jazz in the early 1980s, studying and playing all the time and trying to figure it out, one artist bridged pop and jazz for me, both the present and the past. And believe it or not, that would be Linda Ronstadt, Will Nelson Riddle. She made 3 records with Nelson Riddle. This one here. Sorry, I'm too lazy to take off the covers. Another one. And this one. These are not wonderful recordings. It's sort of a giant wash behind her. But man, her singing is just exceptional. Singing all these standards we associate with Frank Sinatra, who is the archetype for these records. You can now buy all 3 of these in a box set. But man, she's just incredible how beautiful her voice is, her interpretation, her control, her power. I just recently heard that Mexican record she did. Maybe she did a few. She's from Mexican heritage, and that just, I heard a few seconds of it and was like, holy crap. That was so powerful and indigenous and grooving You know, sadly, she can't sing anymore. She's wheelchair bound, but man, I really think Linda Ronstadt is one of the great American artists. She's just, you know, it's easy to say, oh yeah, Mad Mad Love, Heat Wave, Blue Bayou, which show what an amazing vocalist she is. But on here, she's in total command of the swing idiom. She just sings so beautifully. These records, well, I paid $20 for these at the Village rip-off record store on Bleecker, but you can find the box set probably for $10 because nobody cares anymore. But she's, you know, this is so old, back in the mid 80s when it was just seen as pop music, but really this is jazz, and it's really, I feel like there are very few vocalists that are able to do what she did, convey so much emotion and power and dynamic control and range. Man, she was great stuff. And then another great classic of a forgotten artist, Weather Report, Domino Theory, with the amazing D-flat waltz. Is that what it is? Right. With Victor Belli and Omar Hakim, probably the last great version of Weather Report, but just smoke it. As are all the Weather Report records, really. They're sort of forgotten. But now, I mean, I actually play some early Weather Report at the jazz bar because it fits in with all this idea of what spiritual jazz is. It's very expansive, wonderful musicianship, a lot of bizarre synthesizers. This is super, super funky music. Thanks for watching.